The draft itself was still a horror show.
The 67-page draft opinion is clear, sharp, and scornful, declaring in its opening paragraphs that Roe v. Wade must be overruled, and that the 1972 ruling was egregiously wrong from the start. The leader decided that the right to choose abortion is part of the constitutional guarantee of liberty and privacy, insisting the inescapable conclusion is that the right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions.
Okay, but even if that were true, which, by the way, fuck off, the framers probably left off the specific right to abortion because they couldn't anticipate it being such a massive concern. I don't know why these particular individuals didn't have abortion on the forefront of their minds. There must have been some explanation. I just can't quite place the exact reason for anyone the tip of my finger. I think I wasn't just referring to the Constitution. We repeatedly cited some other notable sources, like 17th century jurist Sir Matthew Hale, who once described abortion as a great crime. But that is not all that Hale thought. He also argued that a husband cannot be guilty of a rape committed upon his wife, sentenced 2 women to death for witchcraft, and argued young women were the ruin of families because they, and I quote, learn to be bold and talk loud. And while those beliefs might earn you a Netflix comedy special called Trigger This, they should absolutely disqualify you as a scholarly reference on the matter of reproductive rights. And look, this is not the first time that we've talked about abortion on this show. In fact, the first time that we talked about it in depth, we rewarded anyone for sticking to the end of our story with a video of sloths playing in a bucket that was almost criminally joyful. And if you're expecting something similar this time, I've got some bad news for you. Those sloths are dead now. All of them, 2 from heroin. It's time to grow up. Because we need to be able to talk about abortion like adults. Because when, as now seems inevitable, this ruling becomes official, there will be immediate and devastating consequences. And it is worth taking some time tonight to talk about a few things. What this ruling means, how we got to this point, and where we go now. And when it comes to what this means, it's catastrophic. It'll quickly trigger bans on abortion in these 22 states. And if you are still unaware of just how ubiquitous a procedure this is, an estimated 25% of women have an abortion, and 6 in 10 of them are already parents. Some who get abortions are survivors of rape or incest. Others might need one for medical reasons. But also, just to be clear, some will be seeking an abortion because they fucking want one. And this is very much about them too. This is a fight for people's right to have control over their bodies. It's about bodily autonomy, and the only time it's okay to argue against that is if the body in question belongs to Elmo, because then it is actually fine. He literally cannot function unless someone else is arm fucking him from below. But anything beyond that example is just not okay. And some conservatives have argued that the reaction this week has been hysterical, that this is just returning the issue to the states and that people do still have a choice.
This is not an opinion, by the way, that is going to undo abortion in this country. States may put some more restrictions on it, but people have the right to leave. They can go live somewhere else where it's more of a free-for-all and they can do whatever they want.
Okay, first, where it's more of a free-for-all? Let's just get one thing straight. If you move to Delaware, you're not in some bacchanalian buy one, get one free abortion paradise. You're just in Wilmington. I just don't want anyone to be disappointed when they visit. But also, it's not about merely having the right to go somewhere else. It's about whether you have the resources and ability to do that. And many may not, with this disproportionately affecting those with disabilities or who are transgender, immigrants, or people of color. And the thing is, even with just the existing laws that have been recently passed, abortions had become increasingly difficult to get. Just watch as one woman in Texas learned what getting an abortion would entail for her after her state passed its so-called fetal heartbeat law last year.
You're measuring at 6.1 weeks today, but we do see fetal cardiac activity on ultrasound. So, as of September 1st in Texas, what that means is abortion in the state of Texas right now. Your next options would be traveling out of state to get the procedure done.
I didn't even know that I was pregnant. I kind of just took a test. I'm 6 weeks and 1 day pregnant. I'm not ready to have another kid. I have 2 other little ones that I take care of by myself. So this kind of was very unexpected. Other forms of birth control, and now it's just like jumping through more hoops in order to keep our lives going.
6 weeks and a day, and she can't get an abortion. For most people, that is a period that is 2 weeks late. And your period could be 2 weeks late for any number of reasons. Maybe you're tired or traveling, or you had a change in diet or exercise, or maybe you're just dealing with the stress of living in a misogynistic theocracy run by 5 of the biggest weirdos in the country, including Justice Beer Pong here and Justice My Wife Helped Plan a Coup, and all I got was no consequences whatsoever. Now, in that woman's particular case, she was able to take a loan and drive all the way to Oklahoma to get an abortion. And as awful as this sounds, she was actually lucky, because now that is no longer possible.
What do you need?
Just this week,
I have a little
Oklahoma's
time
governor.
to spare.
Cooper, go back out? Okay. All right, I'll fix it for him. He goes to sleep if he won't sleep. Fix me a thing I
the notion you were but a visitant here, then you would do well to remember the first words of grace given to you. Stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord. If those words held any meaning to you, follow the guidance of grace. Lay low the shard bearers and claim for yourself a great rune. Do so, and the doors to the Round Table's inner chamber will open, and you will receive the wisdom of the Two Fingers. Once the wisdom of the Two Fingers becomes your own, I'll impart to you a proper welcome. As a true member of the Round Table, I have high hopes for you. I'm sick and tired of it. These namby-pamby tinists think us no more than a shelter from the rain. We've spoken long enough. I have matters to attend to.
signed a Texas-style abortion ban into law, which is officially now one of the worst things that Oklahoma has ever produced. And I'll remind you, it also gave the world Dr. fucking Phil. And given that half of those who have abortions are below the poverty line, with an additional 1/4 very close to it, many will be facing limited options. One estimate is that in the year after the ruling, there'll be roughly 75,000 people who want but can't get abortions and will give birth instead. And inevitably, some of those people will die because pregnancy is a major medical event. Already those living in states with the most restrictive abortion policies, and thus the least access to them, were found to be more likely to die while pregnant or shortly thereafter. Look, I know this is all extremely grim, but it is now worth taking a moment on exactly how we got to this point, especially as some have been telling a slightly incomplete story this week. Just listen to Chuck Schumer pointing the finger at blame firmly in one direction.
This isn't your grandfather's Republican Party, America. It's Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Well, hold on then, because in what way is this not your grandfather's Republican Party? It has been advocating for this exact outcome for decades now. In fact, I would be willing to bet that if your grandfather died in the 70s, came back to life right now, and scanned the news, the first thing he'd say is that the current Republican Party sounds exactly like the one he remembers. Actually, I take that back. The first thing he'd say is, who's Elon Musk? To which you'd say, oh, he's a rich arsehole who wants to own Twitter. To which he'd say, what's Twitter? And you'd say, it's basically a massive public toilet that people shit their bad opinions into all day long, but at least Cher is on there too. To which he'd reply, oh, you mean Sonny's wife? And you'd say, yeah, because you don't really have time to fill him in on the divorce, much less the accident. To which you'd say, how's Sonny doing, by the way? To which you'd say, oh, yeah, he's great, he's very healthy. To which he'd reply, does he still have the mustache? And you'd say, oh, yeah, you betcha, because at this point, you are way too deep into the lie to admit to your resurrected grandpa that Sonny Bono died by skiing into a tree. But then, after all of that conversation, he'd definitely look at you and say that the current Republican Party sounds exactly like the one that he remembers. Because it does. This is just not a recent development at all. Because, well, yes, Trump did get 1/3 of this book, including a seat for Gorsuch, that was stolen for him. That was the result of decades of work by anti-abortion forces. Long before Trump ever even considered running for office, conservatives were openly announcing their intention to overturn Roe. In fact, the very day the Roe decision was handed down, the strategizing against it had already begun. Just watch this news report from that day, featuring a lawyer talking about a lawsuit that he was supporting that could overturn Roe.
What about the child's right? You know, when you talk about the woman's right, you're talking about 1/3 of the rights involved. The mother, the father, and the child. Somebody's morality, or lack of it, is certainly imposed upon the unborn children who are killed.
Wow! Women have 1/3 of the rights involved. Honestly, that is kind of perfect. Because if there is one thing that we love to do in America, it's turn everyone who isn't a straight white man into a fucking fraction. That is something that truly is deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. But arguments like that are why some Democrats, like Representative Bella Abzug, argued in the wake of the Roe decision that Congress still needed to quickly pass legislation codifying the right to an abortion. And she was absolutely right. But of course, they didn't do it. Nor did they do it as the anti-abortion movement kicked into high gear in the late 1970s with the support of evangelical leaders like Jerry Falwell, who helped elevate the abortion issue as a way of motivating conservative voters to the polls. They didn't even do it as anti-abortion legislators managed to pass public power. crochet their resentment into a handmade garment. That is stamina. That is someone who fight for the long haul. So clearly, we in the States have a lot of work to do right now, both in the short and the long term. And let me start with those in the most immediate danger. People who need an abortion in states where bans are or are about to be in effect. You still have options available to you, and one good way to find out what they are is to go to the website ineedana.com. It has lots of info, including what is permitted where you live and where you can find clinics and appropriate resources. And if you're struggling financially, one of those resources might be an abortion fund, which can help cover your expenses. If you want to access for support, one of those funds, there are lots of them out there, like the Bridget Alliance, which helps abortion patients who are travelling long distances to reach their appointments, and the Lilith and Yellowhammer funds, both of which help people on the ground in impacted states. But these are clearly just stopgap solutions to deal with an immediate crisis. Long term, we need elected officials to stop tiptoeing around the issue of abortion and take steps to properly safeguard it. Now, the dream for it would be a constitutional amendment that would support people's fundamental rights to make personal decisions about conception, pregnancy, marriage, and family life. But until then, we're going to need other legislation at the state and federal level. And while we're at it, we may now also need to shore up all the other rights supposedly guaranteed by Supreme Court rulings, from voting rights to gay marriage, because the fact is, under the current Supreme Court, your basic rights today could become crimes tomorrow. And there are actually some small opportunities for you on the horizon. In at least these 4 states, abortion is going to be on the ballot this year. And I know you would probably rather eat shards of glass than be told to vote one more time. Especially if you've been keeping up your end of the deal, showing up to the polls and holding your nose to vote for a candidate you may not even like, while enduring thousands of texts screaming, "It is the most important election of your lifetime. Donate $20 to the DNC right now." And you didn't text "Stop to quit" once, no matter how much you wanted to, and you wanted to throw your phone in the fucking river. And look, I also get why Just Vote is an infuriatingly insufficient slogan when voting rights themselves are under siege. I cannot defend the system we currently have, but it is unfortunately the one we've got right now. So electoral victories are going to be critical here, but they also must be followed by concrete actions by those that we elect, because Republicans, if nothing else, just grimly demonstrated what committed action can actually achieve. They never accepted Roe v. Wade as final. They played the long game, and not always fairly, but they rallied their base and relentlessly held their party leaders accountable, whether they liked those leaders or not. And then, crucially, those leaders delivered for them, because they understood that voting is only meaningful if the people who win actually do what they fucking promise you. Anti-choice advocates worked really hard for a really long time to ensure that Roe would not be permanent. But the thing is, its undoing doesn't have to be either. This week, we've all been reminded of what the most marginalized people in this country have known for years, that freedoms are never guaranteed. They are hard-won, and they are easily lost. Progress requires a consistent, sustained struggle, a willingness to disrupt everyday life, and actual courage from the people that we choose to lead us. In short, we are all going to badly need to have the same anger and the same willingness for a long-haul fight as the world's most hardcore knitter. Our main story tonight concerns the Philippines. It's the country that gave us, among other things, Bruno Mars, Olivia Rodrigo, and Jollibee, the single greatest fast food mascot of all time. He's a 6'5" in a tuxedo top who just wants to serve you fried chicken and spaghetti. What do we have that compares to that? Terrifyingly large child? Hamburger Joker? Hello, Mr. Police, I gave you all the clues. Please. The winner here is clear. We've discussed the Philippines on this show before, mostly thanks to their current leader and self-proclaimed dictator, Rodrigo Duterte, who has, if nothing else, a way with words.
Mr. Obama, you're gonna go to bed. Why do you have to, fuck with us, goddammit?
Again, I repeat it. Fuck you.
Now, I know that is a striking amount of swearing, but you also cannot understate just how brazen it is for the President of the Philippines, a nation over 80% Catholic, to call the Pope a son of a whore. That is a big deal. Imagine if Joe Biden publicly told Dolly Parton to go fuck herself. Forget backlash. He'd be dragged from the White House by his feet, and rightly so. And while Duterte's language may have been shocking, his actions have been far worse, especially his war on drugs. It's estimated that on his watch, government officials or vigilantes have killed up to 30,000 people in violence which even triggered the International Criminal Court to launch an investigation into possible crimes against humanity. And Duterte has viciously targeted his critics. This senator, who launched an investigation into his drug war, has been languishing in jail for the last 5 years. And Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Ressa and her news website Rappler have been buried in legal actions, facing at least 11 cases and 10 arrest warrants since Duterte came into office. And the thing is, that's just the beginning.
The Philippines consistently ranks among the top 10 deadliest countries for journalists.
Did people spend their weekend talking Luca? I don't know. We're going to start in Dallas this morning. Suns Mavs game 4 and another solid night from Luca. 26 points, 11 assists, 3 steals. Should I focus on the line or should I move on? On a night when CP3 fouled out, it was more than enough. Dallas Mavericks win it. 111-101. This series is now tied 2-2, headed back to Phoenix. All right, Nick, you predicted Dallas winning both games over the weekend. Dallas wins both games over the weekend.
Yeah. What did
All right,
how
what
did
do you say to your doubters?
Where's your broom, buddy? Where's the broom?
I got this here. Where's the broom, pal? Hey, Broussard. Was this off the gentlemanly? Where's the gentleman's sweet? Oh, you got the broom. Okay. I'm here after this because I got somewhere to go. passing more, but because his teammates were hitting threes. You don't get an assist on a missed three. You do on a made three. Their offense has been the exact same, with the exception of a segment of game one when he was unguardable en route to 45 points. Look at total passes. Look at anything. He took 52 shots in the first two games and 50 shots in the next two games. Yeah, that's the difference. I understand that it's a tough spot because hold on, wait a moment. I understand it's a tough spot because I went out there and you said I went too far and said Luka is already an all-time great playoff performer. I think I said it after 16 playoff games. Now we're at 20, and now what's that I hear? Oh, are other people echoing it? Can we show you? Our friends at StatMuse. They had an interesting tweet. Oh, only guy ever, 36 and 6. Oh, StatMuse. I knew Wiles would say that. So you know what? StatMuse maybe not the best for NBA history. You know who is the best in NBA history? The literal NBA history account. Even though they called Oscar Robertson Oscar Robinson.
Robertson
that seems good. Wait, are there? Oh, really? Is there another like trusted?
They're real.
Oh,
give me a break.
Hold on.
I'm not
We'll
gonna show that.
I'm a pass on those. Hold on.
Oh, it is time to see who's getting into Nick's Club Superstar. We got a little sneak peek on Friday. Nick has finalized the list since then. Doors open tomorrow morning, right here on First Things First. It is exciting.
Never been more excited.
We got to head to Philly first. I actually don't doubt that at all. Sixers Heat game score last night. Maybe the best I've seen from James Harden in these playoffs, perhaps. You know, what used to be ho-hum for the Beard was considered sensational last night. Team high 31, 6 threes, 9 assists, and B dominated as well. Sixers win that series now tied at 2 apiece. All right, Broussard. Harden was good, finally, but I think the question is, can Sixers fans rely on this version of James Harden the rest of the way, the rest of the playoffs?
No, they can't, and they know it. Doc knows it. Heck, Harden probably knows it. But let me clear, there's a misconception out there about James Harden in the playoffs because we all have talked about how, he's not the same player in the postseason. Some people feel like he never plays well in the playoffs, and that's not what we're saying. In fact, yesterday was his 45th playoff game, scoring 30 or more points. That is the third most ever among active players. Look at that group. I mean, that's an awesome group to be a part of. So James Harden has had many great playoff games. The question with Harden is about what's he going to do in the big game? What's he going to do when their backs are against the wall, when it's a must-win situation? And that, if there's a breakthrough, that could be the breakthrough for the Sixers fan. That yesterday, Harden was under pressure, like there was talk about him not getting a lucrative long-term contract. There's talk, about him not even being a top 75 player, like legitimately. I disagree with that. I think that's ridiculous, but there was talk out there. And of course, if they lose the game and fall down 3-1, the series is essentially over. So there was pressure on Harden, and not only did he play fairly well, he played incredibly well, particularly in the fourth quarter with the 16 points. So that could be the breakthrough, Wild. But here's the thing. They don't need 30-point James Harden. What they need is him to be fairly efficient. And yesterday shot 44%, which for him, that's efficient. Because what they can't have is Harden being bad and shooting horrible. And 7 of the 10 playoff games this year, Wild, he has shot 40% or less. 7 of the 10. In 6 of them, he was below 40%. So if he's just efficient, 20 points or so, you got Embiid, Tobias Harris. They just need him to be aggressive as he was yesterday and efficient. And that's a good enough Harden, I think, to get past Miami.
Okay, so I'm going to run a counter argument here on the side. If we did a blind celebration test, you know, they have those food tests, and one's Pepsi, one Coke, you can't tell the difference. And you didn't know how many points James Harden scored in the game. But all you did was look at social media and look at Harden's reactions and look at the fans' reaction. And I said, Nick, how many points did James Harden say he would score? He'd be like, ooh, I don't know. Did he put up a 50 piece? Did he put up 40? Like, no, just 31 points. Just kind of what's expected of a guy who might get $200 million plus. It was his most aggressive game, which we've been asking for him to do. Come out and play aggressive. We can show the full screen. 31 points is the second most he's had as a Philadelphia 76er. When you look at his shot attempts, that's also second most. That's what I want, 3-point attempts. That's second most. So I think this is the Harden that we want to see. I get what you're saying, just to be more efficient. But the celebration in the sort of collective exhale from Sixers faithful, like, yes, this is the guy. I just feel it feels more like a blip than a trend to me, Nick.
Well, listen, on the celebration scale, I know you're very picky and choosy. It was a little more than you would like for a guy who only scores 31, but less than you would like for a mediocre, dirty player who gets out of the playing round. So, like, somewhere on that spectrum of the Kevin Wildes accepted celebrations. However, I don't think he was celebrating necessarily the total points. I think it was more relief than celebration. I think it was the first time James Harden in months has felt like he thinks he should feel that. However, if you're Philly, I've got some sweet and some sour, I guess, for you. The sour is you cannot expect this type of performance again because, Brew, I tweeted it during the game, and then I had Dusty check it, and my inclination was correct. This is literally his best playoff fourth quarter in a close game ever. The most points he's ever scored in a playoff fourth quarter that wasn't in a blowout. So the idea, Harden might score 30 again, but the idea that he's going to carry you like this down the stretch, he's been in the league more than a decade. He's never had a game quite like this one, a close playoff game late. So that's not sustainable. But here's what is sustainable, Brew. And here's why I picked Philly to win the series before the playoffs. And my only trepidation was if Embiid was going to miss the whole series. Obviously, they were drawing dead. Miami has no answer for Embiid. Embiid was at like 60% in Game 1, looked like about 75% in Game 2, well, Games 3 and 4. And they have no answer for him. I think Philly absolutely could win 4 straight if Embiid continues to get healthier. Miami's doing this weird thing where they have no shooting, and Duncan Robinson, who hit 8 threes and makes $18 million a year in the first game of the playoffs. He's played 44 playoff minutes in the 8 games since. He's played 1 minute in this series. Listen, Miami, I know heat culture, defense, toughness, all that stuff. You got to have some shooting. You can't have Gabe Vincent and Max Strus out there firing up threes when you got an $18 million a year marksman who was awesome in the first game of the playoffs with glued to the bench. So Miami, let me say something, Brew, that people aren't saying, and I couldn't believe I would say it. Last couple games, Doc Rivers making some good adjustments. He finally got the memo. DeAndre Jordan, unplayable. Eric Spoelstra, last couple games, a little stubborn. Like, maybe need to open up the rotation a bit and not play the Markieff Morris card. Like, so I think Philly's in a really good spot, Jim. I think they're in a really good spot.
Well, it doesn't matter how good James Harden plays. He's not getting to Club Superstar, which opens tomorrow. Is Jason Tatum's entry status, though, at risk after a rough Game 3? A really rough Game 3. We'll have that for you next.
Relative to the #1 team defensive rating every single year. Basically, when he's on the floor, you have a chance to have the best defense in the league.
You're not likely to get the same three-point shooting performance from Green and Maxey again in a game, but I want to ask specific to Maxey, because we've seen Danny Green do it, right? I love Maxey's game, and I love his energy. I love the way he just is. What do you see from this young man in terms of his emergence?
I said this on air tonight.
What I tell you?
Kirk, the game's tonight, Game Should he play?
I mean, that's fine. I got the same inside sources that you have. I knew he probably was going to play tonight. I'm still standing on what I believe in. I think that they should shut him down for the Joel Embiid being in the concussion protocol. That tells me he haven't touched the basketball in how long? How long?
A week? What's wrong with you?
Let me tell you something. See that face you make lets me further know and lets me have to teach you. Yeah, it lets me have it makes me have to teach you that in a week you can lose a lot in a week, man. In a week of in a game of basketball.
It's one game we had tonight on TNT. Jimmy Butler great tonight. He was, man. They're trying to take a 3-1 lead over Philadelphia with Joel Embiid back for his second game and going to work inside.
They should have 20 of those a game the way they were playing.
And
Bank is open to Philly, right? Yeah. Joel can have whatever he wants in the paint. Yeah, he doesn't have to fade away. He doesn't have to do anything. I'd even post up even more to get them shooters wide open.
Yeah, 24 and 11. How about Bam? Better effort in Game 4 than Game 3. Had 21 and 7.
This was the star of the game right here.
James Harden, indeed, knocks down that 3.
I'm happy for James because we haven't said that in a while.
You're icy hot.
I agree. Danny Green is man up, Danny Green. Leave it, man.
Jimmy Butler.
You too little, Danny Green.
First guy to have at least 40 twice in these playoffs. Had 40 right on the button tonight. Embiid again.
Can't do nothing with that. Nothing at all.
7-point game. And Butler launches for 3. Man. Yeah, he was getting it done all kinds of different ways.
He was. This is the one I like. That's right now. They ain't going.
That's Marquise Morris hitting that put right back in his mug.
Welcome back,
Joel.
Welcome back. He's been out for a little bit.
First time he's appeared in these playoffs. Harden.
Get to your spot quick, James. That was the difference tonight. You didn't have to always dribble 5 times. You dribbled 3 and got to your spot and finished with this. Just finished by Bam.
They wouldn't go away, but they just couldn't get over the hump, Miami. Harden again.
Yeah, Philly did a great job of keeping their poise, and Miami will make those runs.
You know, Harden was 0 for 8 in the fourth quarter from 3 in this series.
Oh, that's a foul.
And tonight he hit 4 of them from the promised land in the fourth quarter, as he scored 16 of his 31 in the fourth, and Philadelphia wins it 116 to 108 to tie this thing up at 2 games apiece. Philadelphia shooting 54% in the game. So we got ourselves a 2-2 series, and here's Eric Spoelstra.
You know, there aren't any absolutes with that. I think in Game 3, we didn't really generate enough good looks. Our offense was really, flat. I thought tonight, I thought we actually had some really good looks. We just missed them. But, that's part of the game, part of the playoffs. Sometimes you don't make shots, but you still have opportunities, to grind out and get a win ugly. We weren't able to do that tonight. It was really close. By banging on the door, it just felt like those last 5 minutes, they had probably a handful of possessions that went all the way down to the final end of the clock and made some big shots. They were defending for 24 seconds, 23 seconds, 22 seconds, and then they would hit a big one. I thought we were in a decent position to try to turn this into a possession game going down the stretch, even as poorly as we shot. We were just competing and trying to get it in the bud, but they made some big plays down the stretch. Yeah, we'll just have to get back to Miami and see. He's such a warrior that we'll just have to see. There's nothing not the outsider the amount of
116, 108, that's your final score. So now this series that was Joel Embiid is back. So tell me how the rest of this plays out.
It depends on James, Tobias Harris. Change the whole dynamic of the game. He's a Shaq-like. Like, you can't go, first of all, especially Miami, because their best big man is 6'7", 6'8". Joel Embiid's the monster. They're going to have to double him. That's what's the difference. You just saw the difference between James getting wide open shots, confidence, Tobias, Maxey, Danny Green. You have to double Joel Embiid. So it's going to come down to those four guys. Can they take their game on the road? It's that simple.
Bless you.
You
are a true saint. My name is Thomas. Presuming you're interested, I can teach you sorceries as promised. Only none of them are particularly great.
We put our head down, we just couldn't get it done. They didn't shoot the ball well. And, they're going home. Look, Philly did what they were supposed to do. When you're down 2 games, you don't have your guy, and you say, we're getting our guy back. You win game 3. Game 4 is a muscle, and they do what they're supposed to do. Miami stayed in the game most of the night, but they didn't shoot the ball well, so it's not like they're shaking. So, they're going to go home, and if they can shoot the ball better, I see this thing going 7 now.
Miami 7 for 30 in game 3 from 3, 7 for 35 from 3 in game 4. Does home court remedy those woes?
Apologies,
I would say that there's probably some more. There would be some home
for your
cooking in terms of
generosity.
shooting the basketball,
All right.
but I think it also
I can tell you what I
comes
know
down
about
to
this place.
Better
That should
contributions in terms of pushing
You've
the
seen that
basketball.
structure to the north, towering
Kyle
over the
Lowry,
water.
when he pushed the
That's the
basketball,
Academy of
when his
Ray
hamstring didn't
Lucaria,
look like it was hurting,
where we
they
study
looked better.
Brimstone
So
sorceries.
just making the game a little
Almost
bit
knows
faster
about
at times
closed
as well.
quite some
I think that would help the shooting as
After
well,
they
because
declared
now
they
you're
wouldn't
shooting in
interfere
transition
with the Shatterer,
instead of always
the
shooting into
Academy
half
cast
court.
repellent
Jimmy Butler's
seals
the only
over the
guy
gate
in a
leading
half
to the
court that
Capitol.
can say, I can
And
get a
the
shot,
Southgate
a
leading
comfortable
here.
shot, and not
As
only
you might have
comfortable, it's a
guessed,
good one.
the seals
Everyone
are
else,
still active,
they're
making
making
entry to
shots,
the Academy
but those are
impossible
contested.
without a glintstone key.
And if you're
And
Philadelphia,
so I'm
for
stuck
me,
here.
I would just have a conversation with James Harden and
With a
say,
little
4
chance of
seconds or less.
acquiring a key.
Do
When
it
you
in 4
cast the
seconds or
seals,
less. If you look at every highlight that he scored, it was in 4 seconds left. I don't think Chuck, at this stage of his career, he could hold it for 5 to 10 seconds and then blow by you. Where he could do that early. Now, 4 seconds or less, make the right play, and you're going to score. And that was a 31-point output because of that. He didn't hold the ball.
If you find an extra glintstone
like
key,
I say,
perhaps,
it's just going to come down to the other guys making plays. It's supposed to not going to let Joel Embiid beat them.
would you
Because you see,
consider donating it to me?
Joel probably should have had another 6 to 8 to 10 points. They knew how to throw a pass. Because he is just so physically imposing.
But still,
but
my place is
The
at the
importance of
Academy.
Tyler Hero, though, look at the Miami side.
Well,
Tyler Hero's got to be integral when you look at that box score, and he was trying to get to that.
I have told you guys, they got
And you
this
never
kid
reach
tried to
the
say,
entry
Oladipo, he's not that guy anymore. But there's 3 guys on their team have to play well. They have to play well. Butler, Hero, and Adebayo. They have to play great. If you get something from Oladipo, that's a bonus.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, that's a bonus. That's a bonus 15. But it's kind of a watch because of Hero.
So 11 on 4 of 12 shooters. He did have 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
James Harden, by the way, we had talked about his fourth quarter problems. 10 points in the first 3 games in the fourth quarter, 16 in the fourth quarter tonight, en route to 31, and a tie series between the Sixers and the Heat.
It is exciting.
Never been more excited.
Well, we got to
for
get to
anything
Philly
on
first.
this show.
I actually don't doubt that at all. Sixers Heat game 4 last night. Maybe the best we've seen from James Harden in these playoffs, perhaps. What used to be ho-hum for the Beard was considered sensational last night. Team high 31, 6 threes, 9 assists, and B dominated as well. Sixers win that series now tied at 2 apiece. All right, Broussard. Harden was good, finally, but I think the question is, can Sixers fans rely on this version of James Harden the rest of the way, the rest of the playoffs?
No, they can't, and they know it. Doc knows it. Heck, Harden probably knows it. But let me clear up, there's a misconception out there about James Harden in the playoffs, because we all have talked about
how, you know, he's not the same player in the postseason. Some people feel like he never plays well in the playoffs, and that's not what we're saying. In fact, yesterday was his 45th playoff game, scoring 30 or more points. That is the third most ever among active players. Look at that group. I mean, that's an awesome group to be a part of. So James Harden has had many great playoff